Dr. Chitwood, or as I call him Paul, and he calls me Jeff, as he has been with us yesterday and today. Yesterday we had a pretty significant luncheon meeting for the Gateway family. We had students, faculty, and staff for a similar event like we're having here today. And then yesterday afternoon he was able to go out and meet some of the faculty and senior administration at California Baptist University. And then last night he preached at Emmanuel Baptist Church, one of the strongest mission supporting churches in our region, and was able to not only preach there but also just motivate and challenge people to be on mission from that church. So that was great. Now today he's here with you for this dialogue breakfast to give you an opportunity to get to know him better, and then he'll be speaking in chapel at 11 a.m. if any of you can stay for that. We'd be delighted for that to happen. As soon as chapel's over, he's walking right out of the building and straight to the airport. So he's not going anywhere because there's a hurricane ravaging the East Coast, and I told him that he can stay at my house over the weekend if he wants. I don't think he wants to do that for some weird reason, but he's certainly welcome if he does that. Rather than have him preach to you this morning, we're going to do two things. First of all, I'm going to interview Paul and set him up with some specific questions about his life, his call to the IMB, his ministry's perspective, and where he hopes to lead the organization. And then some additional questions about what he would say to you specifically as pastors and church leaders about your engagement with the International Mission Board going forward. And then, if you look up here on the screen, there's a number on the screen, 909-334-2208. If you text me questions while we're going through this interview process, they'll be popping up here on my screen in front of me, and I'll work your questions in along the way as well. When I've done this in the past, it usually works out where some of the questions are the things I'm going to ask anyway. Some of the questions he answers without even being asked because he just talks about those issues. But there are always some issues that you raise that we wouldn't have otherwise put on the table. So text me your questions at any point during the dialogue, and I'll be watching them as they pop up, and I'll work them into the morning's time together. And we're shooting for be finished here about 9:40 or 9:45 at the latest to get you on the road back to 10 o'clock appointments that some of you may have this morning. So let me start by saying, Paul, welcome to Gateway Seminary, and to these pastors and other church leaders. Why don't you start by just introducing yourself? Tell us about your upbringing, your background, how you came to ministry, that kind of thing, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for having me here. The last couple of days have been a tremendous blessing. Thank you to the staff and the faculty and everybody who's helped host and been a part of not only the days but preparing for them. And let me say, I know some of you drove at least a couple of hours to get here this morning. Thanks for getting up early. Thanks for coming together. Thanks for being a part of the SBC and IMB family and being a part of cooperative mission work. It's a privilege to get to know so many of our family members across this land. Has had the chance since I came in the role in November to visit different state conventions, different churches, different seminaries, and I tell you, I sense something special going on here in this area. I've been so delighted to see just the cooperation, the strong sense of unity here, and feel like the Lord has sort of put down an anchor point here. As I see what he's doing here at Gateway, and placing Gateway here, the partnership between the local association and the foundation being here, out at Cal Baptist yesterday, and with Emmanuel Baptist, and getting to speak to so many other pastors yesterday and here this morning in the area. I just sense the Lord has sort of an anchor point here of pulling Baptists together, building a strength that hopefully will continue to accomplish the Great Commission in California as people are reached with the gospel through your ministries and the cooperative work here, and then the gospel is taken here from here around the world. We are blessed to have the privilege of serving with your IMB. Thank you for giving to support right at 3,700 missionaries who are serving in over 100 countries of the world today. Those are your missionaries. If your church gives to the cooperative program or the Lottie Moon Christmas offering, and we are so grateful that you make possible what the Lord is doing through them. Coming into the role was a bit of a surprise to us. It's something we never aspired to or expected. In fact, if you know my story, I'll share a little bit about it with you. You may be as surprised and shocked as I am, but I was raised see, when I was 2 years old, our mother left our family, and so I was raised by a single dad for several years there. He started out with a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 4-year-old, trying to manage 3 little boys on his own. Thankfully, he had the help of his parents. His father was a disabled coal miner. He began working in the deep mines in the mountains of East Tennessee when he was 12 years old, and ended up disabled early in life. And that's my grandfather. My grandmother worked in a shirt factory in a little town called Jellicoe, Tennessee. It's right on the state line. The state line literally splits through the towns down about 2,000, but half the town's in Kentucky and half of it's in Tennessee. When our mother left, Dad moved in with his parents for a little while. They were living in the government projects there in the mountains in that little coal mining town, but the coal had sort of dried up, and this is a difficult situation financially for most people, economically. He got on his feet a little bit and moved into a little rented house at 210 Providence Street. And it was there when I was about 4 years old. A couple of deacons from the Baptist church in town were just out knocking on doors, inviting people to church. And they made it up to 210 Providence Street, which was no small task because you had to climb a hill that was like straight up. And when you got up there, there was our house, another house, and then a line of government projects, and then you hit the mountain full on. But they knocked on our door and invited Dad to come to church and to bring his boys. And I'm not sure, Jeff, what they were thinking. We didn't have much to offer the Baptist church, except trouble, and we brought it. You can imagine 3 boys being raised by a single dad. Just we're a rough little bunch there, but what we found was a church family that, in our brokenness, loved us and welcomed us in. And as I look back on it now, they really helped raise us, and I'm very grateful.
Right.
When times were good, the church was running maybe 130. When times were not so good, they'd run 70 or 80, and usually times weren't so good. So it wasn't a big church at all, but a loving church family. And fast forward a few years, I was probably 8, 9 years old, and there was another knock on our door one evening, and he was our pastor. And Dad had invited him to come. My older brother had asked questions about the gospel, what it would mean for him to give his life to Christ. And Dad invited our pastor to come over and share with him. So Dad brought a chair out of the kitchen and set it in front of the green chair that sat in the corner of our living room. And my brother sat down there. My younger brother and I, we sat on the floor and we listened to our pastor share the gospel. And Brother Alan Harrod got 3 for 1 that night. We all gave our lives to the Lord, and we're saved. And I'm so thankful looking back for the faithfulness of just Baptist laymen who were concerned about their lost neighbors, invited them to church, and for a pastor of a church. I'm sure Brother Harrod had his own family and a lot going on at the church, but gave up his evening to come out and sit in our living room and share the gospel with us. So thank you, pastors, for your ministry.
Right.
And I'm grateful for the Lord's church. It's changed our lives and our eternity. Over time, felt the call to ministry. I was educated in what used to be a Baptist college. You know, there's a lot of them that used to be Baptist colleges, and I was at one of those. But from there on to Southern Seminary in Louisville, did MDiv and PhD. Pastor for 18 years in the state of Kentucky.
Right.
Before, in 2011, was called to be the executive director. So I followed a similar pattern, I guess, to our president of our seminary here, as Jeff was a pastor and a state exec, and now leading an SBC entity and doing a great job at that. So from the pastor to state mission work, I was there at Kentucky Baptist Convention about 7 or 8 years, and then in November came to the IMB.
One of the things I really like about Paul is he came from the grassroots of Southern Baptist life and has never really forgotten what that feels like. And he's, as you've gotten to meet him in the hallway, or as you get to know him, he's personable and affable and genuine in his commitment to the Lord and his commitment to missions. And I really appreciate that about you, Fred. Talk a little bit about how the process unfolded for you to be called to the IMB. You know, sometimes we think these are just political decisions, or they get made by somebody in some dark room. I said once in a smoke-filled room, but it's a bunch of Baptists, so we're not smoking in those rooms. But, you know, just that kind of thing. But, you know, I was engaged in this process a little bit with Paul and with the search, and so I watched it unfold and saw how God worked through the whole thing. Tell us about the little bit of that story.
Yeah, I'll just hit the highlights for you, but I had the privilege to see Rob Futrell here, a new pastor in California, not a new pastor, but new pastor in California. Rob was on the International Mission Board as a trustee when I was hired, but I had the privilege, like Rob, of being invited to serve as a trustee on the IMB. In 2002, I served 2 terms of 4 years each, so 8 years on the board, and chaired the board the last couple of years that I was there, 2008 to 2010. So that history and interaction, doing the work that I'd done with our state convention and with the churches I'd pastor. When David Platt announced his resignation, there was just a few guys who reached out to me and said, "Hey, just want to let you know we submitted your name as a candidate for president of the IMB." And I thought, well, I thought we were friends. But it did turn that we got a call late last spring from the committee just inviting us to come to an interview. And I know they had several strong candidates, and they were interviewing several of them in the initial stages. And so I wasn't really bent in that direction. But I remember talking to my wife one day. I said, I don't know if I want to. I was even trying to decide if I would send my resume once they requested that. I said, we've got such a good life here in Kentucky, the ministry, the Lord's blessing, and we're serving the 2,400 churches already. We've got plenty to do, and we know the state and love the pastors and churches. It's just we're in a good place, and I've been an IMB trustee. I know what that's about and what that takes from the president. I served with Jerry Rankin when he was president. I saw the toll it took on him, and so I said, I just don't know. And one day we were having a discussion. She looked at me and she said, as only a middle school teacher can, Paul, it's really not about you. Not about what you like or what you want. Isn't this about what the Lord would have? And I said, yeah, okay. So we did go to the interview, but still I wasn't convinced that this was what we needed to do. And so I went to the interview. I told my wife, I was leaving the hotel that we were in, walking over the hotel where the committee was meeting, and I told her, I said, I'm not going to try to sell myself in there. I'm just going to answer the questions. I'm going to tell them the truth, what I think about things, and I had a lot of attitudes and opinions about it, so that's what I did. And I could tell as just kind of reading the room when I was in the interview that some of my answers weren't sitting real well with some of the people there, but all of my background with the IMB, again, I had some pretty strong opinions, and at one point, one of the ladies, they probably ask all the candidates this, I don't know, but she asked me, she said, why do you want to be IMB president? I said, well, I don't. And they kind of laughed. I said, no, like, seriously, I don't. And I kind of went through my spiel there. I served with Jerry. I saw what it took, the spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
That I mean, the enemy is against this, and to put yourself with that bullseye on you and to enter into this, I don't know why anybody with a right mind would pursue this. Now, I was quick to say, if the Lord would call you, what an honor, what a privilege to serve with our missionaries and to be a part of this work and to serve Southern Baptists in this way and serve the Lord in this way. But it'd be crazy, like to try to go get this job. And so anyway, fast forwarding, I left that meeting. I skipped all the way back to the other hotel because I was just sure, hey, that's the end of that. And I walked in and told my wife I had nothing to worry about. We can go back to Kentucky and enjoy the work there. I'm sure they're not going to be calling back. I just kind of read how things were going there. And I told them what I thought needed to happen, and I held nothing back. So apparently that was pretty effective because several months went by. I'm sure they were working with other candidates, whatever, but as it unfolded, the Lord just sort of brought it back around, and the committee, just trying to discern the Lord's will, ended up calling us back and saying, hey, can we talk again? And that interview, Michelle went with me, which was probably the game changer,
Yeah,
Jeff, in that, and she helps me a lot.
Actually, it was.
So she went with me. They hired her, brought me along. But no, in all seriousness, we really sensed the Lord when we went back and met with them.
Yeah.
The committee sensed the Lord that just giving clear direction. I was voted in November 15th, started the job that day, and it's been a wild ride, but it's been a tremendous blessing to serve.
You said that you had a good awareness because of having been a trustee and then working closely with Dr. Rankin of some of the challenges. So let's shift our attention now to focusing on your leadership now at the board. When you arrived, what were some of the immediate challenges that you encountered, and what are some of the things you're doing to address those, even in these early months?
Yeah, I think some of the things that I thought coming in have proven to be true, but I've tried to be patient. Those of you who are familiar with the IMB, and I know some of you have served out with the IMB, like we're famous for acronyms at the IMB. In fact, other than U.S. military, I don't know if there's any organization in the world that has more acronyms than the IMB. So I've told them, I said that the heart language at the IMB is acronymish. So I've been trying to learn acronymish. I'm trying to fit in, so I made up my own acronym. During the first nearly 10 months in here, during the first 10 months, or really the first year on the job, my plan is to do it all. A-L-L. I want to ask, I want to listen, and I want to learn. And I think that's especially important for me because, again, I came in with a lot of observations, opinions, attitudes from my different perspectives I've had, the different seats I've been. But I've never sat in the seat of the president of the IMB.
Right.
I assure you it's a far different perspective. So I'm trying to make sure that my attitudes and opinions and assumptions are correct before we really make major steps forward leading out. But some of the things I've been able to see have confirmed what I knew. And one is that we haven't done a good enough job connecting with Southern Baptists, grassroots Southern Baptists pastors and churches. Oftentimes they don't know their IMB. They don't know how to work with the IMB. They don't understand, we can be a little complicated in their systems. So what I want us to do is do a better job working with Southern Baptists, mobilizing Southern Baptists, communicating with Southern Baptists. So the last several years, we haven't been telling the stories of what God has done on the mission field. We haven't been writing news stories out of our communications department. During a downsizing 4 or 5 years ago was essentially shut down, and we just haven't replaced it. And so we haven't been sharing with Southern Baptists the good work that their IMB is doing and helping them feel a part of it. So we're going to be working hard in that direction. We're also going to reestablish the prayer office and bringing that in office of president. I've said several times now, and I keep saying it because it's true, the greatest resource for the Great Commission is not our missionaries. It's not the money that we need to fund the IMB. The greatest resource in the Great Commission is the Holy Spirit of God. And the way we appeal to that great resource is in prayer. The way we access that resource is in prayer. So we want to do a better job mobilizing Southern Baptists to pray for the lost among the nations, to pray for the unreached people groups, to pray for our missionaries who are out serving, to pray that God would bring a great harvest. And so we're focusing on reviving our prayer emphasis and prayer ministry. There's lots of other things, and maybe reference a few of those in a moment. But initially coming in to get us praying with a renewed fervency, to get us better connected with Southern Baptists and communicate, telling them because God's doing some great things around the world and through our missionaries. To tell those stories is I think that's the priority for us right now.
One of the things you can pray about for the IMB is, Paul mentioned yesterday that they're really looking for a global leader in the field of communications. Someone who can lead in completely re-envisioning what that looks like for the board, and they need that person, and they're looking for that person aggressively. So we pray that God will provide that person to you.
And any recommendations, I'd be glad to see the names.
Right, yeah, absolutely. One of the myths that's out there about the International Mission Board is that you're not sending or not supporting or sending full-time missionaries. And that myth really originated from two things. One, you had a force reduction a few years ago. And second, there was a de-emphasis on this during the past presidency and an emphasis on some other things that were brought forward. You, however, have talked extensively and openly about the priority of full-time career missionaries and how they're the centerpiece of your strategy. Talk about how the IMB is returning to appointing them, how many were in the pipeline, just the whole process of that as your strategy.
Yeah, so over the last few years, if you've seen anything from the IMB, it's probably been focused on limitless and pathways, and that's still, the IMB still has the pathways to send people that are outside of the career fully funded missionaries. We're not doing away with those. I'm thankful that those were established under Dr. Platt. We have began experimenting with them back when I was a trustee, but we need multiple pathways for Southern Baptists to get to the field, to engage the lost, and we're going to continue. I'm thankful for that emphasis. However, as Jeff has said, in the downsizing, as well as in the sort of the marketing and the messaging of pathways and limitless, there's been this assumption that, well, we're not sending full-time, fully funded career missionaries anymore. Well, we are. I want you to know that, and there are jobs open today, so help us spread the word on that. When I came in the role in November, we were down to, I think it was 82 full-time, 82 candidates in that full-time, long-term appointment process.
Paul, let me put that in context. He said this yesterday, there were only 82 candidates in the full-time appointment process pipeline. And he said that when he was a trustee a few years ago, that number was around 1,000. That's how much it had diminished. And so, just in the last year, it's gone from 82 to now. You said yesterday it's.
Well, we're up over 300 in the full-time category, and in all of our categories, mid-term and full-term, or midterm and long-term, we're over 900 candidates now.
So the word is getting out that the IMB is appointing full-time career missionaries, and there is money available to send them, and there are jobs posted all around the world. And now keep telling your story because you're working toward filling those roles now.
Yes, and it's very exciting. We're thankfully, because of the hard decisions that were made 4 or 5 years ago, we're financially sound, we're in the black, we have the opportunity to begin to grow again. We're not going to grow too fast, but slow incremental growth, sending new missionaries out. When we were down to the 82, I mean, we couldn't even replace the existing force as that force transitions. People retire, people finish their term, come home for whatever reason, but we're in a position now, as we have more people in that pipeline, although it needs to continue to grow, so again, help us spread the word, but we're in a position to to sustain the force that we have and begin to grow that. It's exciting, those, especially with the multiple pathways people can go, shorter term assignments or as team associates where they're funded, self-funded, or funded by their church. When those people show up, just as, I'll use the image I used earlier, just as the work here in this part of California is anchored with a strong seminary, a strong cooperating association, strong churches that are here long term. So when new churches, when planters come in, they're not on their own. There's something established here. There's a network. There's training. So you go overseas, and this is amplified so much more. When a person comes in short term or new, they need an anchor there. That career, fully funded, long-term missionary who knows language, who knows the culture, who's going deep there. That's the anchor point, and we have to have those for the overall strategy to be effective. And that's a priority for us, is to have the long-term, fully funded career missionary who is there as that anchor point, as a lead strategist in the fields of the world, and we're sticking with that.
Well, I can't underscore that enough, because when I was in India this summer with our team here from Gateway, we would not have been able to do anything of consequence that I could see if we had not had the on-field missionaries to guide us. So when we arrived in India, we went there to support the work primarily of 3 Gateway couples that have graduated from here, been appointed by the IMB, placed in India, and have a continuing work there. We sent a team to support them, meaning we asked them, what are your strategies? What can we do to support your strategies? And then we will come and do that alongside you and try to, what's called the flywheel effect, try to accelerate what they were doing beyond what they could do on their own or with their resources that they had and time they had available. So Paul, I underscore just from that experience what you're saying, that the missionary really is the linchpin of all this volunteer movement that we want to surround them with, but we got to have the people there who are enculturated, who have language skill, and who can help you know what to do that really matters or that really makes a difference. So now you talked yesterday about with me about some changes you're making in the mobilization area at the IMB, where you are employing people specifically targeted toward Asian, African American, and Hispanic churches to try to increase the mission personnel coming from those churches through the IMB. You want to talk just a moment about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. And this, you're going to get this because of your context, I think, as pastors of churches in this area, as missions leaders here at the seminary. Southern Baptists are growing more and more diverse as a people, and we need to, if we're going to reach North America, because of the diversity of this continent. The IMB needs to reflect that. All SBC entities need to reflect that, but particularly as we're trying to work with churches that haven't been as engaged traditionally, this is a priority for us. So in talking with leaders, particularly from African American churches, Asian American churches, Hispanic churches, hearing them say that we feel we could connect better with the IMB if we had someone who understood our churches and cultures better, then we want to see that happen. So we're beefing up our mobilization team. Those are the stateside IMB folk who help churches connect to the work. And we're adding a position for an African American mobilizer who's going to work primarily with African American churches. We're going to do the same thing for Asian churches, Asian American churches, as well as Hispanic churches. And we see this as a priority for us, because we know that so much of our Southern Baptist family, that's their identity. We want them to feel a part. We want them to be a part. We want to remove the barriers of them being able to cooperate, to get involved, seamlessly so. And we're excited about where that's going. In addition to that, in addition to that, student mobilization is going to be a priority for us, and we understand that also entails diversity. But getting the next generation of Southern Baptists and of believers engaged in the world mission work is vital. So to that end, let me share with you just quickly about a project we've done with Barna Research over the last year. We're going to be releasing this as a book with Barna next year. It's essentially about handing off the Great Commission to the next generation. And what we've seen from some of the data that's coming in is really what we intuitively knew, but it's given us, it's given confirmation of this in the facts. When, example of some of the results of that, when a person goes on a volunteer mission trip, I was talking with some of the guys earlier about how to get involved in volunteer missions. When a person goes on a volunteer mission trip, their giving to missions increases on average 400%. Because they've been out, they've seen it, they understand it, they get it, they know the priority, and they start giving much more sacrificially to the work. The likelihood that a person will end up on the mission field themselves doubles if they've been on a volunteer mission trip. So the Lord uses that. There are many other findings that would include, and one of the things that's important is that you know a missionary personally. And we see a similar impact in giving and the likelihood of going when an individual personally knows a missionary. So we're so thankful for missionaries in residence and for your churches, bringing in missionaries from the IMB who are on stateside as speakers and letting your people get to know them, meet them. It makes a world of difference. And this great cooperative body of Southern Baptists, I feel that we're on the cusp, Jeff, of something significant happening. I also feel there's an enemy who knows this as well, and he's battling us at every turn. But if we could really begin to mobilize Southern Baptists to the harvest fields of the world, it's going to be incredible.
It is. Well, some of the questions that are coming in are about local church involvement, and I want to shift gears to that anyway, so let's go there. Churches can do about 4 things, I think, in support of the International Mission Board: praying, giving, going, and then sending. And so why don't you talk with these pastors about your expectations and a challenge of how they can do those 4 things in connection with the International Mission Board? What would a good local church international mission strategy look like that was comprehensive in these categories I've just mentioned, or others you want to add?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. This gets to the heart of who we are and what we're doing. I would tell you that initially the best resources and connecting points you can find all referenced on imb.org. We've tried to develop that website. We've just redone it in a way that makes this simple and accessible. But when it comes to praying, you can actually, imb.org / pray, you can find it there easily enough. You can find daily prayer requests for unreached people groups, daily prayer requests for the work, for the missionaries. And if you would mobilize your church, motivate your church to pray, if you'd make the personal commitment to include in your daily prayers, again, I believe that's the greatest resource that we could access in terms of Great Commission work as we call on the Spirit of God. So mobilizing in prayer, and you can get all sorts of resources there on imb.org. As far as going, there are volunteer opportunities posted there. If you have any problem, something doesn't fit, or you need more information, reach out to us. There's a phone number there, the Church Success Center. You can call, talk to a real human being who will talk you through all kinds of opportunities all around the world, what might fit you, your church. So, for example, I was talking to some of the brothers earlier, a church with maybe limited resources. It may be difficult to take a mission trip to Southeast Asia that's going to come in at $3,000, $3,500 per person for the plane fare and what you're going to be doing on the ground. But if you could go to the Americas for $1,200 or $1,500 per person, that may be a game changer in terms of accessibility. So there are lots of options out there, and practical ways to determine what might work for you. When it comes,
May I just say about this? You talked about praying, and let's talk about now about going. I'm not sure that that the variety of ways to go are always in front of in our awareness. For example, some of you think, well, I'm going to go like we did this summer to India and do street evangelism, and that's certainly one way to go. But another way to go is what my church that I'm connected with in Oregon and what Emmanuel Baptist Church just did. Emmanuel sent a team of 25 people to Amsterdam to provide the child care and vacation Bible school type experience for missionary kids during the annual general meeting where all the European missionaries are together for their week-long training. So the church went to support the missionary families by providing this kind of service to them while they were there for training. And so there's all kinds of ways for you to go at various levels of ability and of risk that your church may be able to take. So not everyone has to go to India as a street evangelist in order to support the work of the IMB by going. You can go in a support role to a meeting like this where you provide care for missionary kids for 12 hours a day for 6 days. I'd rather do street evangelism in India, but I would go if you asked me to go to Amsterdam. I'd rather do street evangelism in India though.
Yeah, a good example of that, we had a police officer.
Yeah.
You have a large, particularly in some places in the world, you have a large gathering of missionaries. There's a lot of security concerns.
Right.
Just their identity, some places they serve, it's just, they can't be known. It could potentially be targets. So we had a police officer who came from one of our churches here in the States, gave 7 days to serve as security we had a large security team. He served as security for one of those meetings. That was just his way of giving. We needed him there. It was an essential task.
Right.
And it furthers the Great Commission, because those missionaries, they need to be protected, and really work in an entire country can be disrupted if there's a breach in security and their identity is out or what have you. So lots of opportunities.
Go ahead. I was just saying that. You talked about praying and going. You might want to talk about giving and sending, or whatever you'd like to say about that.
So when you give through the cooperative program, the part that makes it to the SBC, the lion's share of that comes the IMB. Thank you for that. But we believe in the cooperative program at the IMB, not just because we get a good portion of what makes it the SBC. We believe in the cooperative program at the IMB because we need all levels of cooperative missions functioning well in order for the world to be reached with the gospel and order for the IMB to do its work. So the IMB sends missionaries who are trained at Gateway Seminary, where cooperative program dollars provide for the training. The IMB sends missionaries that were saved and called to missions in a church plant in Southern California, and that church plant was funded through the local association and their missions offerings, but also maybe through the North American Mission Board, through the state convention. Those two are cooperative program funded. So the whole system works together, and we believe in it, and thank you again for cooperative program gifts. The Lottie Moon Christmas offering, all of that money is used overseas, and giving is still important. While we are in a good place financially, there's a stark reality here. When I was an IMB trustee, we hit the height of the number of missionaries we had under appointment. It was between 56 and 5,700. You look at where we are today, fast forward 12 years, and we have 2,000 missionaries missing from the field. So our force as Southern Baptists has been reduced by 2,000 on the front lines. The only thing that stands in the way of us having 5,700 or 3,700 or more than that is the funding. So thank you for the generosity of giving and sustaining what we have. And if you can help spread the good news of what the Lord's doing through cooperative missions and Southern Baptist Convention, so that other churches and other individuals would want to be a part of it, increase in their generosity, that's awesome. Lots of materials, Lottie Moon promotional materials, videos, all on imb.org, and we'll come out, one of our individuals will come out individually and meet you and share with your church about how to get more involved in giving, going, praying, and sending. The sending part, help us in this regard. Call out the call.
Exactly.
Call out the call. Don't hesitate when you're offering an invitation. You've preached on the Great Commission. You're offering an invitation for people to be saved or join your church or be a part of the ministry of your church. Don't hesitate to also include, and some of you may have the nations on your heart. God may be calling you to go live cross-culturally, share the gospel somewhere else in the world. I'm thankful looking back for a pastor who was calling out the call when I was sitting in the pew. And I heard that call, and the Lord used that. He called through the preaching of the men who stood in the pulpit. I think in a lot of Southern Baptist circles, we've lost that side of it, that emphasis, particularly when it comes to overseas missions and the call to be a missionary. So help us in sending and your preaching and your ministry calling out the call.
That's excellent. I have such a frustration about some churches, and I don't think there's anyone in this room who'd fall in this category because you're here, okay? But it frustrates me when churches don't understand the power of cooperative program giving, first of all. But even when they do, even churches that give to the cooperative program are reluctant these days to promote and receive a Lottie Moon Christmas offering for international missions. And when I've talked to pastors about that, they've often said this to me, well, we don't, people don't like to give to special offerings like that. And I look up on the platform and I'll see all these shoeboxes at Christmas time that they're promoting every Sunday and getting people to give to. And I think, what is wrong with us that we promote other people's missions programs? Nothing wrong with those, but not promote our own opportunity to send missionaries all around the world. So thank you for being here, because you're probably already a church that gives to both of these venues or through both of these channels, but keep it up. Keep it up. and don't be reluctant to do that. I noticed, like last night at Emmanuel, after the service, Ben Skog, the pastor, said, tonight, some of you would want to give, and we're going to make that opportunity available. And there are ushers who have offering plates available at the doors, and if you'd like to give on the way out, please do so. And people lined up to give. It's lined up to give. They want to give to missions. It was no hard sell, no big appeal, no formal approach, just people want to give. And listen, a group of Baptists that would be out on a Wednesday night to hear the International Mission Board president, they wanted to give to missions, I can assure you. It's not a hard sell. All right, let's do a few rapid fire that came in on the texting, Paul, and just ask you a few simple questions here. First of all, you work in some high stress situations, some high security situations, the board does. What are some strategies you're using there? And specifically, how are you using technology in those areas to get information about the gospel in places where we're pretty restricted?
Yeah, we are in some places that some people wouldn't want us to be in terms of governments or certainly the enemy. And so we have to be very conscious of that. We have invested a lot in security, in secure communications, trying to use the right kind of devices and software to ensure that our people are able to stay where the Lord has called them, because this is the big challenge. When they get kicked out, many times if they're the only witness there, the only voice there, then there's a silence that sets in, and we don't want that. So this has taken a lot of our time and attention, and it takes more resources in terms of money to work in situations like that, and to have in place the kind of security that we need. When it comes to using technology, we are working with some pretty creative groups that are building, like for instance, there's a little projector that's small enough to hold in your hand that you can take anywhere in the world, sit in front of a screen and show the Jesus film or show videos that are able to communicate the gospel. And this is especially important among oral peoples who they can't read. Even if they had a Bible in their language, or if you can take a Bible, it's of no use to them because they simply can't read. So the technology is very helpful. There's a little device as well that we have access to that creates a network that is self-contained. For example, if I had this in the room and you came in the room looking for free Wi-Fi, you would see, let's say, we'll call it Gateway Network. You would see Gateway Network, and you would see it's open. And you can click on it, and once you get in there, you find that I'm in there. And I'm in there privately messaging you and sharing the gospel with you, or maybe doing some training with you. And when you're in a communist country, in a very difficult place where all the internet is monitored and controlled, this can be an incredibly helpful way to do training in public places, to share the gospel in public places, because that network, again, is self-contained. It's not connected to the World Wide Web. And then once it's turned off, it has no memory. So there's no trace of what's been communicated or conveyed on that network. So there's just some really cool stuff out there now, and some very creative minds that the Lord is using to develop some of these tools, and we're finding them in some places very helpful.
That's awesome. Here's one, and I'm going to answer this one for you, okay? I'll take the easy ones. I got a great joke about that, but I won't waste your time with it. But it says, the question is, how many of the 3,700 missionaries are full-time? And the answer to that is all of them are full-time. Now, the question I think you're asking is how many of them are fully funded, and that would be a hard question to put Paul on the spot about, because just like in your church staff situation or your church situation, missionaries overseas are funded fully by the board. Some pay their own way. They're retirees who are serving. Some are students on short-term assignments who are getting funding from various sources, but they're full-time while they're with you. So everyone overseas is working full-time in the responsibility they have, but the funding for these processes come from a lot of different sources. Did I get that answer right?
You did. There is a little more information I can share with you. So the team.
Well, you are the president. I'll let you go ahead.
You did great, though, Mr. President. The team associate role is it's not funded by IMB, but they serve on IMB team.
Right.
There's about 130 of those folks who are serving with us, but most of the rest of the 3,700 we're fully funding. There may be a few little exceptions.
Right, and fully, when you say full-time, they're full-time while they're on the field, but they may only be on the field for a year or 2 or 4, depending on their length of a service appointment. So they're only going to be funded during that time frame, not for their entire life. Okay, here's another question. And I'm sorry, back to overseas questions. Okay, no, this is a question about U.S. partnership. How is the IMB working with North American Mission Board on people groups that are also in the U.S. that you're serving overseas and U.S.? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. This is something we're ramping back up. So in about, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, the cooperative agreement for the IMB with the SBC was changed to allow the IMB to do work in North America. So that was kind of off limits for us up until that point. And we launched into that to try to help churches and associations and state conventions reach the unreached among the nations who the Lord has brought to this nation. But 4 years ago, that was shut down by the IMB. There was just a different emphasis, and we stopped that work. This year, we've relaunched it. So Terry Sharp and Brian Galloway are 2 of our personnel who are working in the States, who will come out and train your association, your church, your state convention, and give you resources and help connect you with IMB missionaries who may be like working with an unreached people group in South Asia, and you know that people group's in your city, and you want to know how to reach them. And so a missionary who's on their what we used to call furlough, but their stateside assignment, they're back in the States for 6 months or a year on a break, but they're still serving with the IMB and still being paid by the IMB, they'll come out because of their experience and working with that people group around the world. They'll come out and train you and help you know how to do that better where you are. And so again, that's something that we're ramping back up and already beginning to do trainings on, and we're available. And we know, especially with the diversity in California and the large immigration population, this is probably something that we could really be helpful to you and work effectively with California Baptists on.
That's good. So there are 2 or 3 questions here about church planting, and one of the things that the International Mission Board has done is really narrowed its focus, and you might talk some about that. But while the International Mission Board is willing to be involved in a lot of different things, what's on the point of their spear is evangelism that results in churches. And so church planting is at the core of what your international strategy is about. Maybe talk about how that works and how that relates to other things you might also be doing overseas.
Yeah, so we talk a lot about the missionary task at the IMB, and the goal of the missionary task, or the culmination of that, is that you would have healthy churches that are reproducing churches planted, and then eventually we would be able to exit and see the work continue on in indigenous fashion in the churches that are there in the area. So that really is our priority. That's our goal in every people group that we're engaging. And yet, there are a lot of other things that we do besides church planting. That some of that is to have platforms to access a people group or a country, but other aspects of that are just, we see the need there, we want to obey. Baptist Global Response is a lot of this, the work that we do among refugees, a lot of the work that we do among orphans, a lot of work we do community development, helping clean water projects, we do through Baptist Global Response, which is a very closely connected Southern Baptist partner agency that the IMB works uniquely with, and your state commissioner of the church can work uniquely with. So here's what way I explained this earlier, what you want to know. You have a team on their way right now to the Bahamas. Everybody's seen the images. We want to do something, right? Our hearts are breaking for the suffering that we see and just know is unfolding there. Well, the good news is you've already given. When you gave through the cooperative program, and part of that money ends up with Baptist Global Response. Baptist Global Response is essentially your disaster relief agency overseas.
Right.
And they're already on their way. They'll be working with Baptists in the area. They'll be taking teams in and helping provide clean water, shelter, food, and they're already there. You can give extra. Just go to gobgr.org, gobgr.org, like I did yesterday. Click on donate, and you can join me in making a special gift to the needs that are in Bahamas. But the beautiful part of cooperative missions and the way IMB and our other agencies are working all over the world to meet practical needs and very real, in the midst of very real human suffering, is that it's all, the network is already in place, the organizations are already up and going, and we can all be a part of it.
That's awesome. All right. I'm going to say a closing word in just a minute, but first of all, would you like to join me in thanking Paul for being here today and just express your appreciation for this man? Fantastic what you're doing, and I'm so proud to be a part of it. I wrote a blog this week about entitled My Preferred Missions Partner. And the International Mission Board is my preferred missions partner. And what I mean by that is this. It's my professional partner, obviously. I'm a Southern Baptist Institute leader, and I support the International Mission Board. But beyond that, I've chosen personally to be invested in the International Mission Board for several reasons. Number one, I believe in their leadership. Not just Paul, but I've been watching the IMB leadership for a long time. And down through the ranks, I know the vice presidents and other leaders, and I have confidence in their integrity and in their leadership. Second, I believe in their doctrinal integrity, particularly their understanding of issues related to evangelism and church planting and the doctrinal and theological foundations that drive that. And I really think they're on track there. Third, I admire their fiscal accountability and responsibility. They devote an infinitesimally small amount of money to marketing and maintaining the organization, and the maximum amount of money to field ministry all around the world. And you can compare them to any nonprofit, and you would find them at the very top of the percentages that are spent on the field and not spent on themselves. And then finally, they're my partner because they have a global reach, and they can help me to do almost anything I want to do anywhere in the world. And here's what I mean by that. For years, probably, my wife and I have been married 39 years, probably for 40 years, I've been giving to the Lottie Moon Christmas offering. And all of our marriage life, we've set aside money every month so that in December we can make a generous gift to Lottie Moon. We've done that for so long, it's just a part of who we are. About 15 years ago, about the time we came to the seminary, my wife said, Jeff, I feel burdened to do more for orphan care and orphan relief in the world, and I want to start giving financially toward that end. And so we started setting aside money every month for that purpose. Now I said back to Ann, I'm willing to do that because I see your burden and I share it with you, but I'm only willing to do it if we give the money through the International Mission Board. I'm not giving to an independent ministry that supports orphan relief because I know how much money they spend on raising money to support orphans and how little they spend on helping orphans. And so I said, let's give it through the IMB. So I contacted the IMB and I said, do you have orphan relief or orphan care projects going in the world? They said multiple of them through the missionaries that we're working with. I said, great. And I send a check twice a year to the IMB and say, send this money to the mission field wherever it's needed in the world to help with orphan care and orphan relief. It doesn't matter what you want to do internationally. They have a global reach. They're the largest mission sending organization in the world. We can do anything through them if we just ask. They'll help us engage and work through them. And I'm also invested personally, not just financially, but also personally with my time. I've been overseas multiple times with the International Mission Board projects. I both, as this summer, went to India to do street evangelism and pastor training. In past years, I've spoken overseas at these meetings called the AMGs or AGMs, annual general meetings, where the missionaries come together for training and motivation and inspiration. And I'm committed to doing both of those things on the go forward because I'm personally invested in what we're trying to accomplish. So church leaders, this is what I would say. Without any apology, without any flinch, without any hesitation, declare yourself a ministry partner of the International Mission Board. Make it your preferred missions provider and lead your church to understand that's who they support and who they stand with. Doesn't mean we dismiss other organizations. whatever they're doing for good and for the kingdom, we bless it, we support it, we're glad for it. But our preferred partner, where we're going to put our time, our energy, our prayers, our money, and our personal influence is going to be with these guys at the International Mission Board. Paul, you're my partner, and I'm all in, and I want you to know that, and I want everybody here to know that, and I want everybody else to get on our train too. Now, I'm going to wrap it up with one last thing. There's one last question here. It said, there are many seminaries and universities granting training. Is there a process to go to the IMB without having a full-time seminary degree? Don't even think about trying that. You need to come here and get 17 degrees before you can go anywhere. All right, here's the deal. Without going into a lot of detail, I know how the IMB works on this. It's kind of like a progressive chart. The longer you're going to stay on the field and the more money they're going to invest in you, the more training they expect you to have. But there are always places that you can go and serve based on your life experience or the training you already have. So no one is disqualified from serving, but we want the people who have the full-time investment, the full-time commitment, and are expected to give 30 years of leadership overseas to have the highest level of training before they go. But the board will work with you on all that. So don't let training or lack of it or the level you have be an excuse for you not getting involved in missions and going if God is calling you to go. All right, I keep saying last word. Michael Crane right here is here. He's our professional in residence or missionary in residence here at Gateway this academic year. He's available in this area for this entire 12-month period to come to your churches, meet with you personally, and consult with you about how to engage your church with the IMB. He serves internationally in Southeast Asia, I'll say that much, and has been for years. This is your third time, I think, to be the Gateway missionary in residence, so I know you've been at the board at least about 12 years to get that 15 to get that many times back. So he's a great resource, and we provide his housing, his car, and everything that he needs for you and his family to live here and just serve you full time for this year. So take advantage of it if you can. All right. You got a few more minutes if you want to come up and talk to Paul personally. I got to most of the questions, maybe not every one of them, but I tried to get to all of them. I really appreciate the time you invested in us this morning. If you can stay for chapel at 11, go up to the library and work on your sermon for an hour and come back down for chapel. But if you have to go, we understand that. But I do hope you'll come up and get a moment with Paul on a personal basis. So thank you for coming, and we're glad you're here today. And thanks, Paul, for being here with us.